In this section, I want to talk about why we sleep. So, there are several different types of theories about why it is that we sleep. Of course, I started this off by saying that we don't really know why we sleep, and all of these theories have their problems with it. So, one is the idea of sleep as a restorative response. This is maybe the most intuitive um, theory for why we sleep. Basically, at the end of the day, we feel tired, we feel run down. And when we go to sleep and we wake up, we feel better. And so the idea is that somehow sleep restores the effects of the wear and tear that occurs during wakefulness. We know that brain activity is reduced. This During this time we're groggy if we're awoken. So clearly there's something that is turning off and maybe is allowing the brain to fix things during this kind of period of being off. The problem with this is we haven't figured out what that is. We don't know what is being restored during sleep. Probably the next most intuitive theory is sleep as an energy conservation response. That basically this is a way of slowing down our metabolism and allowing us to restore the energy that we've used up during the day. Um, we generally see during sleep about a 10% decrease in energy metabolism. Especially we see a decrease in brain activity during non-REM sleep. We also know that animals with higher core temperatures and metabolic rates tend to sleep more. That being said, sleep isn't universally a savings for a brain metabolic rate. When we're in REM sleep, we're actually using more energy in the brain. And overall, it's a relatively modest metabolic savings. And we don't actually have to be asleep. We could accomplish the same savings really through quiet wakefulness or meditation or something. So it really, asks the question, why do we need to be unconscious during this time when we're at increased risk of a predator or something happening to us while we're out? So it doesn't seem that it saves enough energy to really make sense. Another theory about the function of sleep is sleep as an adaptive response. This takes an evolutionary view where sleep is a useful behavior that's inherited from our ancestors. And so, while this maybe isn't intuitive, if you think about it, when you're asleep, it does keep you out of harm's way. If you think about ancient humans, we are not good night animals. We don't have particularly good night vision. And we would be susceptible to prey. We might trip over a root or something and break our leg, which would be devastating in the days before medicine. So maybe it actually makes sense for us to develop a need to go crawl up in the back of a cave somewhere and just check out until the sun comes back up. And we see this with lots of animals that they only obtain food during a certain part of the daylight cycle. So you might have small rodents that seek the safety of a hole in the ground during the day, and they come out at night where they can sneak around and avoid prey. Um, or that you see herd animals who are always worried about becoming prey, and so therefore they don't sleep very much, so they can remain vigilant. but also because they have to eat a ton of food in order to meet their energy needs. Um, Whereas then you have the prey animals, your lions and tigers that just lay around and sleep whenever because nothing's going to mess with a lion or a tiger. They have no fear, and so therefore they can just take a nap whenever they want to. So there could be something to this. There's also the idea of sleep as a brain response, and that learning is following sleep is often better. Sleep maybe facilitates changes in the brain, and that neural circuits could be consolidated or strengthened during sleep. So there's a lot of scientific evidence, especially in the past, say, 20 years, that have really been pointing toward that there is a lot of synaptic work that is strengthening or maybe even pruning away of synaptic connections that are occurring during sleep. And so maybe that this is a really vital function for things like learning and memory. So when we're talking about those theories of sleep, we're often focused on non REM sleep. So we also have dreams that occur during sleep. And I do this to start talking about REM sleep, but first let's kind of define what is dream sleep. So dreams are products of consciousness that occur during sleep, which a person will um, will take the images and the sounds and the other stimuli they receive and interpret them as a reality. An interesting fact, on average, people will spend 6 years of their lives dreaming. So we typically think of dreams as occurring during REM sleep. And often people just conflate the two, that REM sleep is dream sleep. And um, if we were to wake people up during sleep, if I had EEG, so I know what stage of sleep you are in, if I wake you up out of REM sleep and say, "Hey, are you dreaming?" About 75 to 80% of the time, a person would say, "Yeah, I was dreaming." However, if I woke a person up out of non REM sleep and asked them, "Hey, were you dreaming?" About 20% of the time they would say, "Yes, I was dreaming." So there is still some type of dream activity that occurs outside of REM sleep. And other researchers have looked at even how you ask people. So if you ask them, "Were you dreaming?" versus, "Tell me what was going on through your mind," we actually see an increase in reports during non REM sleep. And maybe 70% of people will say something was going on. Um, so there does seem to be mental activity that occurs during non REM sleep. They just seem to be a little different. Non-REM dreams are shorter, they're less emotional, they're less visually vivid. Sometimes there's just more of a thought or a feeling that's occurring during this non-REM sleep. So, what are some of the characteristics? And so, I'm going to kind of talk mainly about REM sleep dreams, but what are some typical characteristics that we see of dreams? Well, dreams usually contain something that's bizarre. Um, and this is most often that there are actions that are happening, but sometimes it's characters or the settings, but rarely is everything bizarre. It's usually that there's many things that are quite normal, but then just some aspects of it are kind of bizarre. um Usually dreams are set in an unknown situation. Only about a quarter of the time are they in a familiar place. There is, if we're looking at social interactions, that we see, less than 50% of the time, those social interactions are aggressive. And often when they are aggressive, it is that the person that's dreaming is usually the victim. Then we see that there's still large times when they are friendly. And These are usually through words or gestures that we see this either aggressiveness or friendliness. Dreams often incorporate things in daily life. Domestic and routine things are more often than like professional work type settings. But then sometimes they're leisure time, but actually, very rarely are they kind of a fantasy situation that occurs. It's very rare for there to be no characters in a dream. Um, People are usually the active participant. Kind of rarely are a person just watching it like a movie or a TV. There's usually a mixture of familiar and unfamiliar people that are in dreams, though friends only occur about a third of the time. More common are actually just acquaintances or colleagues that appear in dreams. There's also something known as lucid dreaming, where you are aware that were dreaming. About 50% of people report that they've ever had a lucid dream, and about 15% or more will report that they have one more than once a month. Um, Interestingly, people who play a lot of video games are actually better at doing lucid dreaming. And also, the experience of pain is actually very rare in dreams. So, dreams can be affected by our everyday life. There was an interesting study done by Bob Stickgold where he found people who had never played the game Tetris before. And this was in the year 2000. Tetris was a very popular game at the time. So it was actually very difficult for him to find people. But he found several hundred people who had never played the game Tetris before, brought them into the lab, and had them play just a ton of Tetris. Then they slept, and he woke them up out of REM sleep and asked them about what they were dreaming about. And while no one reported dreaming about being in the lab playing Tetris, they would have dreams that were related to Tetris. They would talk about boxes falling from the sky, or having to stack things, or so they would have things that were very closely related to Tetris. He did another follow up study where he brought in an arcade simulator of downhill skiing, and had people play that all day, and then they slept. And then that night, when he asked them about their dreams, once again, they didn't dream about being in the lab playing an arcade game, but they would say that they were dreaming about a childhood trip that they had taken to go skiing. Another type of integration of events is that things going on during sleep can be incorporated into dreams. An example of this is our alarm clock dreams. That when alarm clocks go off, many times people will actually incorporate that noise into their dream. That they'll dream that there's some type of alarm or something that's occurring, that's going off during their dream, and not recognizing that it's their alarm clock. So, what are the functions of dreams? So, Freud developed a psychoanalytic theories of dreaming. And so, this is a turn of the last century. I want to say 1899, I think, is when he published his influential book on dreaming. And so, this theory basically said that dreams allowed us to release psychic tension from unconscious wishes. In other words, people had these unconscious forces that were just simply too disturbing to be able to think about, that they were just so horrible that we can't think about them when we're awake. But if we kept all this stuff bottled up, and we weren't allowed to ever think about this, then we could go, quote, crazy from, these unconscious forces. So what dreams allowed us to do is they would disguise these horrible unconscious thoughts, and they would allow them to get past the brain sensor. And so you would have manifest content, which is what you could remember of your dream. And then you could use that to figure out latent content, which was supposed to be the underlying meaning of the dream. Now, there's really no evidence that supports this kind of theories of dreaming. However, for many decades, the psychoanalytic theories dominated theories of dreaming. And it wasn't just Freud. There were many people after him that expanded and had different variations of these ideas. People like Jung and Adler and French and Fromm and Boss and Hall. All these people had different variations that all um, usually moved beyond the repressed sexuality that Freud had in many of his theories and so other things, but we're still all basically the ideas that your dreams held some kind of deep underlying meaning. However, in the late 70s and 80s, there was kind of this reaction to the psychoanalytic theory. And so you had Hobson and McCarley who developed the activation synthesis model. And so I'll mention that McCarley was my postdoc mentor. And so there's a picture of me and when I was much younger with Bob McCarley. Um, and so what they developed, and so I call this scientific based theories. The psychoanalytic theories were really based on introspection and thought, where they just simply tried to figure out why either themselves or their clients were experiencing the dreams that they were. The scientific based theories was trying to look at research evidence and develop theories of dreams from that research evidence. And so the activation synthesis came from a lot of brain recording data that said that dreams were the result of the brain's attempt to make sense of random brain activity. So basically, during dream sleep, you would have these random activations of memories, and you're activated the memory of a train, and then the memory of a giraffe, and so your brain would then try to make sense. Why am I thinking of a train and a giraffe? Oh, the giraffe must be the conductor driving the train. Um, so another type of scientific theory was the psychological individualism. So Gervais, who was one of the kind of discoverers of REM sleep, who called it paradoxical sleep, basically thought that REM sleep restored neural circuits and that were modified throughout the day, and that by it restoring these circuits, that this helped preserve psychological characteristics. Though I should note that when Gervais was saying this, he didn't really make any distinction about REM sleep and dream sleep. He considered them to be equivalent. Um, Another theory is based on Cartwright's theories of emotional regulation. She did a lot of studying of dreams in people who were depressed, especially those following divorce. And so, what her research showed was that dreaming seemed to be involved in emotional regulation and being able to work through depressed feelings. You also have more recent theories of threat simulation, the idea that dreams are kind of a virtual training ground, that where you can practice your responses to different things that might occur. And then, kind of most recently, and you have many different investigators who have all found evidence that that dream sleep may be related to memory consolidation, and that the brain activity that occurs during training could be replayed during the dreams, and that this helps to strengthen memories.